Hello friends, meet again with Ndrow Movie, here. As usual, don't forget to pray for you all to always be happy and healthy in the future. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please subscribe. In this video I will discuss one of the films entitled, Baby Sister Wanted. Let's just start with the storyline of this movie.
At the beginning of the film we are shown a girl named Angie who is on a journey. From this it is known that Angie will be heading out of town to study college. Before leaving he had prayed first with his mother. Then he arrived at an apartment where the apartment was where he lived during college. Due to limited funds, Angie has to live in the same room with another person named Erica. From the pattern of her life it can be seen that Erica is a girl who likes to get drunk, very different 360 degrees from Angie. At night Angie called her mother at a pay phone, because she lived far away from her mother. Her mother always reminded Angie to pray all the time. When it was finished, he would walk home. Because it was too late at night Angie was startled by a young man who walked up and bumped into her. When arriving at the apartment Angie also took the time to pray first. In the morning Angie and Erica arrive on campus for lectures. Before entering class, they first read the bulletin board. On the bulletin board there is info about a girl who is missing and not found. Not long after, Angie saw a piece of paper that read job vacancies as a babysitter. Without thinking he immediately took the paper. Then Erica said that the telephone code was in the Montesquieu area, which was in an agricultural area far from the city. While chatting, from afar a mysterious man was seen stalking them from afar. Even the mysterious man also followed Angie who was in college. After college Angie went to a pay phone and called the job posting, where Angie is still being followed by the mysterious person. Then Angie arrived at the job site. Then Angie was greeted by a man named Mr. Stanton, who was the man who posted job vacancies on Angie's campus. Not long after that a small child came out with a woman from inside the house. This woman is named Mrs. Violet who is the wife of Mr. Stanton. They are both parents of a boy with the same name. The husband and wife explained why they needed a babysitter. They said that every weekend they had to take care of the cattle in every village. They are so busy that they don't have time to take care of their children. Hearing this, Angie became more and more interested in working in the house. Then Angie was invited into the house by Sam's mother to get to know Sam better before taking care of her. But Sam didn't say a word and just kept silent while still staring at Angie. A few minutes from chatting, Angie was allowed to go to the toilet for a while. Immediately Angie went to the toilet and looked in the mirror and prayed, "I hope this job is the right job." When he finished he was surprised by the presence of the same who was waiting suddenly. Angie walked down and was indifferent to it. He was also told by both of the same parents that Angie would be working on Friday nights. In other words, Angie only had to work every Friday night. Then Angie headed back to her apartment. Here it is also seen that the mysterious person is still following Angie. The next day Angie arrived on campus to study. Then he was suddenly called by a guy who was lying down. It turned out to be the guy who bumped into Angie by the pay phone. The guy immediately introduced himself and said his name was Rick. Rick also happens to live near campus, which is adjacent to Angie's apartment. At night Angie had just finished praying in a nearby church. It was at the church that she met Rick again. He was invited by Rick to hang out for a while at a nearby cafe. While walking Angie told me that on the first day of college she felt someone was following her. Rick, who heard this, said that he would be jealous if someone followed Angie. Then they both spent time together that night. After that, Rick intends to take Angie out tomorrow night, but remembers that tomorrow night he has to work. From his meeting with Rich, Angie began to feel the seeds of falling in love and smiling to himself. When morning comes, Angie is confused as to why the door to her room is pasted with paper about missing people. He started to feel strange and reported to the police right then and there. Angie also reported that recently she was often followed by someone unknown. He was also afraid why the paper was only pasted in his room, even though the apartment had many rooms. In the end, the policeman gave a business card along with a phone number for Angie to call in case something untoward happened. Then the scene shows it's already night. Angie was getting ready to head to Mr. Stanton's house right then and there. But the car engine used by Angie can't start. Then he was surprised by the presence of Rick, who appeared suddenly. Rich said he was going to fix Angie's car that had broken down. But Angie was too late and there was no time to wait. Rick, who is worried, plans to give Angie a ride. Rich also said that after dropping her off he would come back here to fix Angie's car. Without thinking, of course, Angie immediately accepted a ride from Rick. On the way to the house, it was very dark and lonely. Rich and Angie's faces were so dark that they couldn't be seen at all. Then Rick asked Angie, "Are you kidding to work in this faraway place?" Because she needed pocket money, Angie replied that she was very sure. Then they arrived at the house. Mr. Stanton had also noticed Angie's arrival. When I entered the house, Angie asked Mr. Stanton, "Could you take me home when I was done with work?" Then Mr. Stanton said, "Of course you can, why not?" Not long after that, Mrs. Violet called Angie to come up slowly, because Sam was sleeping. He was also shown the same who was sleeping in his room. Then Mrs. Sam pointed out the things that Angie should pay attention to. Like, don't set the TV too loud when Sam is sleeping. Then there was a landline that Angie could use if something happened. There are also Jeep car keys in case Angie needs them. Angie is also shown the food in the refrigerator that will be consumed by Sam. His mother said that don't give Sam anything other than food with the same name on it. Then the same father and mother then went by car. Now there were only Angie and Sam in the house. Sam, who was sleeping, made Angie just wait while reading a lecture book. Not long after reading the book, some of the lights in the house suddenly went out. He tried to turn on the light but it still wouldn't work. Angie, who felt panicked, immediately prepared warm water for her to drink. Just as he was about to go back to reading, he heard the house phone ring. Turns out the call was from Rick, who was repairing Angie's car. Then Angie said to Rich that Rich don't bother picking her up, because Mr. Stanton will give Angie a ride home. Not long after, the house phone rang again. When picked up, not a sound was heard. Angie just turned off the phone. But the phone rang again. The panicked Angie picked up the phone but still no sound. Then Angie plans to entertain himself by watching TV, but Angie's turned on the TV volume is very loud. In the end he stopped watching TV, and he also remembered that the sound of the TV would wake up the same. When Angie checked the same room, it turned out that the little boy was still asleep in the room. Then Angie heard a knocking sound from a room. When he checked, it turned out to be a toy hat blown off from the outside. Angie turned around and was surprised that the same had suddenly appeared. In such a low voice, Sam said that he was very hungry. Immediately, Angie took Sam to the kitchen and took his food. Strangely, the meat that will be eaten by the Sam does not look like animal meat. Angie felt like she had never seen this meat before. Then Angie took another container of food from the refrigerator, but still the meat that was prepared was the same as the meat before. Angie immediately heated the meat just like that. The heated meat was immediately given to the same, with the same voraciously eating the meat, no longer using a fork. The little boy was very fond of the meat that his parents prepared. But suddenly a mysterious person tries to enter the house. Angie then immediately peeked out of the window, but there was no one in sight. Angie was so panicked that she just locked the door. He didn't want to be terrorized all the time. Angie finally called the police and reported that she was being followed by someone. He tells about a mysterious phone that keeps ringing all the time. The policemen said they would carry out a patrol by going there to check the location. Hearing that, Angie felt a little calmer. When I finished calling, it turned out that the same was no longer on the dining table. Angie is confused about this. Where exactly is this? He immediately looked for the same throughout the room, but still the same was not seen at all. He immediately called Rick, who was driving. And it turns out that Rich secretly wants to pick up Angie. But when Rick was driving, he kept honking at the car behind him. Immediately the phone was immediately turned off by Rick. The atmosphere suddenly tensed when the mysterious person kept wanting to enter the house. The frightened Angie could only hide behind the wall. Unfortunately, the door was successfully opened by a mysterious person and he walked into the house. When the man entered the TV room, Angie immediately changed places and hid under the table. Angie saw the mysterious person take the knife out of his hand. Not long after, the same voice came from upstairs. Angie, who wants to protect Same, tries to find weapons in the house. Angie was sneaking around to avoid the mysterious person. The mysterious person continues to check every room there is. At that moment, Angie immediately hit the man with a stick and he just ran. While running, Angie sees Same walking out of the house. But the mysterious person chases Angie and manages to catch her. With fear, he immediately hit the mysterious person using a flower pot. The man suddenly fell unconscious and Angie took his knife. Angie left the house to look for Same, who was missing somewhere. From a distance, Angie saw his father's warehouse. Angie also guessed that Same was in the warehouse. Sure enough, Angie saw Same was silent and sitting in the barn. When Angie wants to run away by car, she realizes that her mobile key is still left in the house. Like it or not, Angie had to go back into the house with the Same. Angie quietly walked past the mysterious person who was still unconscious, but suddenly the man came to his senses and grabbed Angie's leg just like that. But strangely, he didn't want to hurt Angie. The man immediately strangled Same and lifted his body up while shouting that Same was the devil. Then Angie woke up and hit the mysterious person many times until he fell. When the man fell, there was a prayer beads protruding from the man's shirt. On the other hand, the same man who had been strangled earlier took out a horn from his head. The little boy kept telling Angie he was hungry too. From here, Angie begins to realize that Same is not a human child. Angie also tried to run away from the house, but unfortunately the same father and mother had arrived at the house. Immediately Mr. Stanton said that this man's name was Nicoletta. It turns out that the mysterious person who was hit by Angie was a priest. When the priest came to his senses, Mr. Stanton immediately stabbed him in the head with a knife. Immediately, Angie began to realize that the pastor's aim was actually very good. Which is where the priest deliberately came to destroy the Same, alias the devil's child. Then Angie was immediately hit by Mr. Stanton just like that until she was unconscious. Long story short, Same's father and mother are planning to leave the house. They are afraid that people will become aware of their tracks. At that time Mrs. Violet said she would prepare the things to be brought, while Mr. Stanton will prepare food for same during the trip. Then Mr. Stanton was seen taking a girl out of the cup car. Meanwhile Angie is being held in the barn. Not long after that Mr. Stanton came in carrying a girl openly. Mr. Stanton said, now he will prepare food for same, which is actually their child is a devil child who only likes female meat. Mr. Stanton also admitted that he had moved houses many times so as not to be suspected by the public. Then he also prepared various sharp weapons on the table. From this conversation, it was revealed that the girl in the missing persons paper was actually kidnapped by the same parents. The girl named Rebecca turned out to have the meat chopped and prepared in the refrigerator, which is where the meat was eaten the same a few hours ago. Because the child is so greedy, both parents have to look for a new girl every week. So they lied to Angie and said they would take care of the cattle, though they were looking for prey and managed to kidnap a girl tonight. Then the girl's body was marked using a marker as a sign of cutting meat. Angie couldn't help but witness the girl being hit by a hammer on the head. The goal is that the girl is killed but her heart is still beating so that the blood produced is still fresh. After death, the girl was hanged like a piece of meat. Inhumanely Mr. Stanton cut the girl's body one by one. The necessary parts of the meat are put in plastic. Immediately after finishing Angie's turn to get the meat arrived. At that moment, Angie's head will be hit by Mr. Stanton's hammer. But suddenly a police siren sounded from outside the house. At that moment Mr. Stanton and Mrs. Violet came out of the house to greet the police. The cop said that he got a call from a girl named Angie. But Mr. Stanton lied and said Angie was home half an hour ago. The same parents kept lying to the point where the police just said goodbye. While leaving, the cop saw Mr. Stanton's license plate number. The policeman immediately ordered his colleague at the office to check the number plate. On the other hand, Angie kept trying to untie the knots in her hands. When Mr. Stanton came, Angie immediately hit Mr. Stanton's leg with a hammer. Angie, who panicked, immediately ran away. When they arrived behind the warehouse, Angie saw the priest's body was there. He also saw Rick, who was next to the priest. Angie continued to run from the house. But Mr. Stanton, who had difficulty walking, chased Angie on a motorbike. Yes, it was clear that Angie had to be caught. One of Angie's legs was also attached to the meat hanger and ready to be hung. But suddenly from behind came a policeman pointing a gun. At a moment like this, I feel really relieved, but suddenly from behind there is Mrs. Violet, who beats the policeman. Angie Pun got up and tried to pick up the gun that was on the floor. When the gun was obtained, Angie immediately shot Mr. Stanton. Angie quickly also shot Mrs. Violet, who wanted to beat the policeman. Immediately, Angie and the policeman would run away using the jeep that was there. When he got into the car, the police said he would look for the same. Angie kept stopping the cop and asking him to leave the house. But this police officer was really annoying, which in the end the police was actually bitten by the same who did not know where to come from. This is where the problem starts again. Same, who doesn't like men's meat, now wants Angie to eat. Angie got out of the car and ran to the warehouse again. Angie also took the bag of meat her father had cut earlier. When Same was walking, he accidentally stepped on the metal hook that hung the meat. At that moment, Angie pulled the rope and Same was hanging from above. What annoyed me here, why didn't Angie just finish off the demon child? Long story short, Angie was finally able to escape from the house freely, and in a state of weakness. Angie's car just swayed. Angie immediately fainted in the car instantly. And luckily a police car came to that location. Then Angie wakes up in the hospital in a coma. It also looks like Rick is still alive and in that room. The policeman in the room also told Angie something. The policeman said that they could not find the little boy, all they found was a priest, a policeman, and the bodies of 20 women buried behind a warehouse. Angie, who heard this, was immediately shocked and said that she had hanged the little boy in the barn. The next scene shows same already with new parents. At that time the job vacancies paper as a babysitter was affixed again and the film ended. Thank you for stopping by the Ndrow Movie channel. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share. See you in the next video.